Hi, it's Walt Medlin of BonusLife.com, bariatric surgeon, bariatric surgical patient, and this is my website address. I think it's going to go live in the next few days. It's still linked to my blog at BonusLife.net right now, but BonusLife.com is going to be its own website pretty soon here. Just went to 2 conferences, and this is more blog type stuff than baseline, so this won't be on the main page. So first is the Minimally Invasive Surgical Symposium, which Dr. Phil Schauer and a lot of other faculty put on every year for about the last 19th year. Yeah, they're just in their 19th year, 20th year next year. It's been a big part of minimally invasive surgery, not just bariatric surgery, but colon surgery, hernia surgery, anti-reflux and foregut disease surgery, really focused on advanced technologies, but still baseline techniques as well, and growing that area in all sorts of ways. I only went to the couple of days for the bariatric part and a little bit of the foregut part, which is the upper gut as opposed to hindgut, the lower end of the gut, which is more colon and rectal surgery. So I didn't see that part. And like a lot of conferences, you're trying to catch, it's like trying to catch a waterfall in your hands. You're paying attention, and yet they're going fast through stuff, or you're tired too, and the talks are 15 minutes at a time. So these are just these are just things I caught. The keynote, one of the keynotes, was Dr. Lee Kaplan from Harvard, talking again as his area of research, basically into multiple causes of weight as an issue, hunger, reward centers, and that using medications practically is very much a reasonable approach even now, but we're really in the infancy of understanding how medications help with surgical tools, or maybe even someday will, for some people, replace surgical tools. I don't want the word replace is tricky. This is all going to be tools in the toolbox, but for some people, the surgery might not be a tool that they go to early or maybe at all. Certainly, learning more about genes and different people's responsiveness to certain medications is really going to be a helpful thing, but it's certainly not imminent. It's not going to be here in the next year or two in terms of usefulness when you go to your doc. But those big gene tests are coming. They're going to start studying them even now. They've got some medium-sized genetic studies, but they're going to have some mega genetic studies going on. So the Dr. Schauer is at the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland. There are Cleveland Clinic branches in Florida and Arizona, I think, too, and in the Middle East, actually. But the conference is in Las Vegas most of the years. It's been around. He's moved it some. So I was on faculty, or I was a panel member, really, I wasn't teaching, but that's a panel with docs, including one of my other mentors, Dr. Butch Rosser, who's an amazing man. I got to sit next to him, and we got to talk about great things, and Dr. Shanita Johnson and Dr. Corey McBride were on that panel as well. And Dr. Schauer did the panel himself, which was pretty cool, that he was moderating, asking questions, and you could really tell, even if the other 100 people left the room, he was excited to talk to us about this, especially all at once, because we got to riff off of each other. So that was a lot of fun and a real honor, honestly. I learned a lot, and I want to keep these reasonably short. So a lot of it is stuff you know, but it's still great for docs to share with each other. But we had all these other docs in the audience and providers. There were also multiple debates. A couple of them were on our clinic's issue of duodenal switch, or the single anastomosis duodenal switch, simplified duodenal switch. And the interesting thing on that was the debates were not nearly so controversial. It was agreement and less strong agreement. I think people are really starting to realize that keeping the pylorus has a lot of benefit. They still have questions, and that's appropriate. I think it's fine for people to carefully adopt new things, but these debates were getting less confrontational. There's a lot of talk about reflux and sleeve, and I think appropriate. It's the right thing to do to be talking about this. And there's a lot more ways to investigate. There's a lot more than just one flavor of reflux as well. And I think I caught some of the good talks about that as well from the people who deal with reflux as their main part of their practice. Some of the curveballs, if you will, some of the curveballs with gastroparesis. Great talk by Dr. John Rodriguez of Cleveland Clinic about it's not one size fits all for these diseases either. So we wish things were easy, and sometimes plain vanilla works fine for a lot of people, but you got to recognize when you're not necessarily dealing with that. And sometimes we don't know right away. Same day discharge was an area of, I'd say, growing comfort. We need a little better tools. We need a little better protocols and ways that we take care of people and education. But safety is an important issue, but cost is a good issue as well to keep an eye on. And same day discharge does not necessarily have to be a compromise in safety. Like I said, this is a big audience. There's probably over 500 people there during the main parts of the day. I don't know exactly. It's a big room, and it's really cool, that energy with so many people who you admire and you know are, I don't want to make it overly, but a lot of these people are driven to the point of Olympic athletes. I like to think of myself as dedicated, but wow, that energy, it is hard not to try to bring your A game in terms of paying attention for somebody with a little ADHD like me. But like I say, it's like trying to read the encyclopedia. You can't catch it all. But I take lots of notes, and I'm not putting them all in here. As always, too, diabetes is really key to Dr. Schauer's heart. He was the head of the major New England Journal trial, the Stampede trial, which is still really one of the trials that everything else is measured against. All right, so great things in Las Vegas, great things with Miss. Every year, it's great. I don't go every year because there are too many good conferences, but every time I go, I love it. And I like the format too. It's some of our more academic conferences are there's less between the lines. The between the lines stuff comes right out. People say, "Well, here's what I'm thinking," and when you're given a scientific paper, you kind of can't put in your opinion as much. So this is valuable for that. So the other one, I came home for a day and then went off to this Surgical Disruptive Technology Summit, which is Dr. Erik Wilson, Erik with a K, who's in Houston. He's the University of Texas prof, and the leader, one of the few early leaders. I mean, we're talking more than a decade ago for robotic surgery, but he's not just a robot guy. He is a surgeon first, and he is a minimally invasive surgeon, but he's also he really does enjoy that innovation and coming up with new things and being around, incubating new ideas. So this is a way to bring together other factors, not just docs, but some industry folks who bring scientists and engineers into the equation. And that is not something that is easily done just in universities. So this does take, people worry about us being in bed with industry, and that's very rarely the case. We need to know the people who are building our tools so that they build better tools, or otherwise it's just going to be engineering tricks. So really focusing on, again, this is trying to put 3 days into 3 minutes, but some of the highlights, we're talking about toolboxes when we can have some very highly specialized tools that may not be used that often, but they're still usable, and making them so that not just experts at 3 universities can do it. So they want to spread these ideas and these abilities around safely. Some of those are about detection and prevention of disease, especially early cancers in the esophagus, in the colon, advanced techniques for that. Things that are completely different, not just a better way of looking with a scope, but a way of using molecular biology, using markers, anything you can think of. That's what they're there to try to see if they can make it work. This also treatment, though, very much innovation in terms of ways of treating, both to be more effective and to be less invasive. There were also talks on the innovation side about patents, about FDA approval tracks and what you need to do and what your requirements are. There was a great panel on investment and how investors think about these companies, because this is not, everything has a sort of golden goose story or lottery winner story, but more of this stuff is a grind. And the people who put money into these companies don't have expectation of quick turnaround quite often. However, it's a little trickier in the surgical space because drugs will sell to millions of people and they can make billions of dollars, whereas a new innovation in surgery may help thousands of people, but if it's cost you $100 million to make something that's never going to make you more than 20 million back, it's hard to talk somebody into putting money into that other than just for love. So a lot of people put a lot of time in. It's amazing the time people put into developing these things. There was a good part of debate on both of these I said about reflux and about endoscopy and debating whether or not we should be doing it on all patients before surgery, especially sleeve, but even gastric bypass in terms of what are we not detecting before surgery. It's a pretty low number, but this is where we have to start looking at that over time. And then really no discussion about the post-op, which I asked that question about, well, okay, I'm a sleeve patient 10 years out. How often should I get scoped if I've never had any precancerous problems? And all respect to the guy who was given that talk, he went right back to talking about his pre-op point. We don't even know really. I don't want to make it sound like we're in the dark, but there's no consensus. There's really no agreement of how to get people back in to do screening long term. But watch that space because I do think that's going to be an issue. We talked about a lot of robotic things, and that's cool. And they're there. I have done a couple of hundred robotic cases. I'm back on the robot at Salt Lake Regional with the new XI machine. There's a lot of new robots coming. There's a lot of talk of using robotics as digital surgery, computer-based surgery, not that the thing does anything automatically, but more it helps us give better care by being consistent with how we care, with how we move, and detecting if we're maybe lost, which it's not impossible to get lost inside of somebody's abdomen or inside of tissues. You know, giving more information to the whole team and the whole caregiving team, not just the surgeon. Part of the question of a lot of these advanced technologies, though, is okay, we can do it. If we can do something now through one 1-inch incision and it gets you home in 1 day instead of a day and a half, and you don't have to have 3 little incisions, but it costs more, would you pay extra? Most people will be like, well, I paid maybe $500 extra, but I wouldn't pay $5,000 extra to be home 8 hours earlier and with 3 fewer Band-Aids. And so, you know, it's a lot of work for these folks to build something that really is a better mousetrap to the point that people demand it, or that the outcomes are different enough. And this really is the bottom line for everything, is outcomes, is taking better care of people, avoiding disease, detecting disease, curing disease, and doing it with fewest side effects. So innovation, but careful innovation. Even the most radical pie in the sky people, we know we've got to be careful. I mean, we have a different kind of responsibility. There was one other thing I wanted to put in here. What do hospitals add, which is kind of funny. I'm push my close in power mode. My power setting mode came on. And then these super advanced things, he didn't mean it this way, but it's kind of funny to listen to Professor hedge their words. This technique is fairly safe in expert hands. And I turned to my mentor, one of my chief residents from 25 years ago, Dr. Randall Baker, and said, fairly safe in expert hands? And what happens if something goes wrong? Oh, you aren't enough of an expert. It's like, it's just funny when you're way out there on the cutting edge of technology, people start to get pretty scared pretty quickly about it. Well, we've done 20, we don't know. If 3 out of 100 is bad, it may take us 100 to see that 3 out of 100 is not as safe. So know that people are being careful, but it is funny to that term. So hopefully that's not too inappropriate. There's a lot of changes. I'm sorry that's quick. I could easily even just babble for 30 more minutes on some of these things. But these technologies, these conferences, it's amazing the work that people are doing to make healthcare safer in general. So thanks. I'm Walt Medlin, BonusLife.com, Salt Lake City. Thank you so much.